The first time I noticed her, she wasn't doing anything remarkable. Just leaning against the counter of the repair shop, one hand wrapped around a paper cup, the other tracing the chipped edge of the wooden surface like she'd done it before. She didn't belong there, not really. Most people in this place came in muttering about deadlines, broken laptops, cracked phone screens. She stood out, too composed, too self-assured, as if nothing here could hurry her. I should have been fixing the printer on the workbench, but my eyes kept dragging back to her. She looked mid-40s, maybe a little older, with the kind of presence that makes you straighten your posture without knowing why. Her jacket hung loosely off her shoulders, but she carried it like it was a deliberate choice, not an accident. When she caught me looking, I almost dropped a screw. "You're staring," she said. Not sharp, more like an observation. Heat crawled up my neck. "No, I gestured toward the counter. I was making sure the machine's light isn't bothering you." She tilted her head, amused. "The machine's light." Her tone wasn't mocking, not really. But it pinned me there, fumbling. I looked back down at the printer, pretending it required urgent attention. The shop had gone quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but charged, like the air before a storm. Every sound sharpened, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the soft hiss of her cup as she pressed it against the counter. My hands kept moving, but too quickly, too tense. "You work here often?" she asked. "Every day," I said too fast. Then, realizing how it sounded, I added, "It's kind of my place. Keeps me busy." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she studied me, her eyes lingering longer than necessary, like she was weighing something. Then she smiled, small, restrained, the kind you don't forget. "Busy is good." That should have been the end of it. A stranger, polite conversation, nothing more. But when she set her cup down, I noticed her hand tremble slightly, just enough that the lid clicked. She steadied it quickly, like she hoped no one had seen. I shouldn't have cared, but something about that tiny crack in her composure pulled at me. I slid the repaired printer back across the counter. "It's fixed now." She tapped her nail against the edge. "Efficient." Her phone buzzed then. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and for a second the calmness vanished. Something heavy flickered there. Regret, maybe, or just distraction. But she pressed the phone face down and looked back at me as if none of it had happened. "I'm not yours," she said suddenly, out of nowhere, like she was shutting down a thought I hadn't even voiced. The words caught me off guard. My mouth went dry, but something reckless pushed out of me before I could stop it. "Then why do you feel like home?" The silence that followed was worse than any answer. She blinked once, then gathered her things with deliberate slowness, as if giving me time to take it back. But I couldn't. When she finally left, the bell above the door gave its usual hollow ring, and the shop returned to its ordinary state. Dust motes in the light, the hum of machines, my hands idle on the bench. But the room didn't feel the same. And no matter how many laptops or printers I fixed that day, I couldn't stop replaying that moment. The way she paused, just for a breath, before walking away. Like maybe she'd felt it too. She came back 3 days later. Not for the printer, which was still working fine, but for something smaller, a cracked phone screen. I almost laughed when I saw her place it on the counter. It felt like an excuse, though she'd never admit it. "You again," she said, like I was the one haunting her routine. "Me again," I answered, softer than I meant to. She folded her arms, keeping a careful distance from the counter this time. Guarded. The same woman who had looked so steady, so composed, now stood with her weight pressed against one hip, like she was bracing herself. I started working on her phone. The glass splintered easily, and I tried not to think about how many tiny pieces there were, how careful I'd need to be not to cut myself. The silence stretched again, charged like before, until she broke it. "Do you ever get tired of this?" she asked. I looked up. "Of fixing things?" "Yes." Her eyes dropped briefly, then lifted. "Things that break so easily." It was a strange question. Not about phones, not about printers. Something else. I didn't answer right away, just watched her run her thumb along the inside of her palm. A small, nervous gesture she probably didn't know she was making. Sometimes, I admitted, but I like giving them a second chance. Her lips pressed together, like she didn't want that answer to mean anything. She turned slightly, scanning the cluttered shelves behind me as if they were suddenly fascinating. I kept working, but I noticed the way her laugh, short, unplanned, escaped when I muttered about a stubborn screw. It wasn't loud, but it lingered, and when she stopped, her expression softened for the first time, revealing something quieter, tired eyes, as though she hadn't slept well in weeks. "You look exhausted," I said before I could stop myself. That earned me a quick, sharp glance. Observant. "I didn't mean, it's fine," she cut in. But her voice wasn't harsh, just thin, almost fragile. I set the screen carefully in place, slower than necessary. She watched, but not the way customers usually do. It wasn't about the work. It was like she was waiting for something else. Maybe for me to say more, maybe for me to stay quiet. When I handed her the phone back, our fingers brushed for half a second. Her hand pulled back too quickly, as though the touch burned. But in that flicker, I felt it again. That same unspoken electricity I tried to convince myself I imagined the first time. She tucked the phone into her bag, cleared her throat, and said, almost briskly, "Efficient, as always." But as she turned to leave, she hesitated, just for a breath, her shoulders tightening, her hand lingering on the strap of her bag. Then she looked back, not at me, but just near me, as if looking directly would be too much. And in that hesitation, I felt it, the pull she was fighting and the one I couldn't ignore. It happened on a night when the rain refused to stop. I was closing the shop, pulling the shutters halfway down, when the door pushed back against me. She stood there, hair damp from the storm, a faint trace of mascara blurred near her cheekbone. "You're still open?" she asked, voice steadier than her appearance. "For you," I said before I could think better of it. She stepped inside, shaking out her umbrella. The smell of rain clung to her, sharp and clean. The shop felt smaller instantly, the hum of the overhead light too loud, the space between us too narrow. She placed a folder on the counter. "Laptop's acting up." I didn't ask why she couldn't wait until tomorrow. I just nodded and took it, setting it gently on the workbench. She stayed near, instead of pacing or checking her phone like most people do. Her silence wasn't empty. It was thick, pressing against me from every angle. "Coffee?" I asked, more to fill the air than anything. She hesitated, then nodded. I poured us both paper cups from the machine in the back. When I handed her one, her fingers lingered longer than necessary against mine. Or maybe it was just me refusing to let go. We sat at the counter, cups steaming between us. The rain battered the windows, a rhythm that made everything else feel distant. She loosened her jacket, leaned back, and for the first time, looked unguarded. "My son used to come here," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Years ago. Different owner then." I blinked. She'd never mentioned a son. "He's grown now. Far away. Too far." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to ask more, to bridge that fragile crack she'd just offered, but my throat closed around the words. Instead, I nodded, holding her gaze a beat too long. She looked away first, tracing the rim of her cup with her finger. The laptop beeped on the bench, pulling me back. "It'll take a while to reboot," I said. She didn't move. The silence stretched again. Then, softer. "You shouldn't say things like that." "For you." Her voice had changed, lower, heavier. I swallowed hard. "I know." The storm outside grew louder, the lights flickering once, and for a moment it felt like the world narrowed to the space between us. Her hand rested on the counter, open, palm up. I almost reached across. Almost. But her phone buzzed, sharp against the wood. She flinched, checked the screen, and her expression hardened. A name she didn't say out loud pressed against her lips. She silenced the call, closed her bag too quickly, and stood. I should go. I stayed seated, gripping my cup until it bent in my hand. At the door, she paused. The rain pelted harder. She looked back once, eyes searching, and for a heartbeat I thought she might stay. I rose from my chair, almost stepping forward, but the bell above the door rang, and she was gone into the storm. The storm passed, but the quiet it left behind stayed with me. Days went by before she returned. Too many for me not to notice, not enough to make me forget. She came in late again, close to closing time, carrying nothing in her hands. No phone, no laptop, no excuse. Just her. "You're locking up?" she asked. I nodded, keys in hand. "But I can stay." Her mouth curved, not into a smile, but something smaller, weary. "That's dangerous to say." I set the keys down on the counter and leaned against the bench. "You're here anyway." She didn't sit. Instead, she stood near the window, arms folded tight, watching the streetlights flicker against the glass. Her reflection overlapped with mine in the dark pane, two figures caught in a space that wasn't built for this. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence pressed harder than words could. She exhaled, slow, and her shoulders dropped as if she'd been carrying something too long. "What are we doing?" she finally asked, her voice low, almost breaking. The words froze me, not because I hadn't thought them myself, but because hearing them out loud made them real. I forced a breath. "I don't know." She turned then, really turned, facing me. Her eyes searched mine like they were looking for proof I couldn't give. "You're too young," she whispered. "And you're—" I started, then stopped. "Older? Wiser? Untouchable?" None of it felt right. "You're you." Her lips trembled into a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." She stepped closer, the space between us shrinking until I could see the faint lines around her eyes, the tiredness she hid so carefully. My hand twitched at my side, wanting to bridge the gap, but I kept it still. "You don't understand what this is," she said, firmer now, as if convincing herself. "Then tell me." Her gaze held mine too long. Silence again, deafening, raw. Every second was its own confession. She swallowed, and when she spoke, her voice was fragile in a way I'd never heard from her before. "It's the first time in years I've felt awake." The words hit harder than any declaration of love, because they weren't about me, not entirely. They were about her, about the life she'd lived, the weight she carried, the loneliness she tried to bury. I wanted to answer, to tell her what she was to me, but the words stuck. All I could do was stand there, breathing in the same air, holding the same silence that now bound us. Her eyes shimmered, though no tears fell. She shook her head slowly, almost to herself, and whispered, barely audible, "This shouldn't be happening, but it is." It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow and uneventful, until she walked in carrying nothing but her bag. She didn't say hello, didn't even pretend to have a reason for being there. She just set the bag down on the counter, opened it, and slid a photo across to me. I hesitated before picking it up. A younger man stared back, my age, maybe younger, standing beside her in the same half-smile I'd seen flicker across her face before. His arm draped casually around her shoulder, hers resting at his waist. They looked at ease together, comfortable in a way that seemed unreachable now. "That's my son," she said. I glanced at her, then back at the photo. The resemblance was there, jawline, the curve of his mouth, the kind of brightness you don't notice until you see it mirrored. I started, then stopped. "He's gone," she said, matter of fact. Too matter of fact. 3 years now. Car accident. The words landed like a blow I hadn't prepared for. My mouth went dry, the photo suddenly heavier in my hand. "I'm sorry," I murmured, because it was all I could say. She leaned against the counter, folding her arms, watching me carefully, as if measuring how I would react. "You remind me of him." "That's why I shouldn't." She trailed off, shook her head. "But here I am." I set the photo down gently, not trusting myself to speak. My chest ached in a way I couldn't name, tangled between her loss and the sharp edge of what she'd just admitted. "It's not fair to you," she continued, her voice softer now. "You're not him. I know that. But sometimes, when you look at me, She pressed her lips together, cutting herself off. Her hands trembled as she tucked the photo back into her bag, but she wasn't fast enough to hide it. I wanted to reach for her, to steady those hands, but I stayed rooted where I was. "Do you want me to stop?" I asked quietly. She froze, eyes flicking up to mine. "Stop what? Whatever this is. Talking to you. Noticing you. Being here." For a long moment, she didn't answer. The only sound was the hum of the old ceiling fan above us. Then, in a whisper that sounded almost like surrender, she said, If you stop, I'll disappear too. The air between us shifted, subtle, seismic. Not loud, not dramatic. But it shook something deep inside me, something I hadn't expected to feel so strongly. She pulled her bag close and straightened her shoulders, like she'd already revealed too much. But the words lingered, refusing to fade. And when she left that day, the shop felt emptier than ever. Because now I knew, it wasn't just me drawn to her. She was fighting it too, and losing. The night she stayed, it wasn't planned. The shop was nearly dark, only the faint glow of the streetlight outside slipping through the blinds. I'd closed early, but she lingered, sitting on the old stool near the counter, tracing circles on the wood with her fingertip. Neither of us spoke for a long time. There was no storm, no broken device, no excuse. Just silence. I shouldn't be here, she said finally, her voice calm, almost resigned. You are, I answered. She looked up at me then, her expression unreadable. For months I'd been guessing, trying to decipher every pause, every glance. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, she let the mask slip. Her eyes carried years of weight, regret, loss, something deeper I couldn't name. And for the first time, she didn't try to hide it. I've spent so long holding it all together, she whispered. And now I don't know if I want it anymore. The words lodged in my chest. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into the kind of comfort she wouldn't allow herself to ask for. Instead, I stepped closer, careful, leaving space if she wanted to retreat. She didn't. I sat on the stool beside her, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. The air between us thickened, not heavy but fragile, like one wrong move might break it. She exhaled slowly, her hand resting on her knee, trembling just slightly. Without thinking, I let my fingers brush hers. A touch so small, it could have been an accident. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand, letting her palm open against mine. The warmth of her skin, the softness of that simple acceptance, said more than any words could. No confessions, no promises, just the truth, finally unspoken between us. This was real. Whatever name it carried, however impossible it seemed, it was real. We sat like that, hands barely holding, shoulders brushing, while the hum of the shop filled the silence. The world outside went on, cars passing, people living their lives, but inside, time felt suspended. She leaned her head, just slightly, until it rested against my shoulder. The weight of it was gentle, grounding. I didn't move. I didn't dare. For the first time, there was no confusion, no questioning, only stillness. I can't promise you anything, she said softly, eyes half closed. I'm not asking you to, I replied. Her lips curved faintly, a smile that wasn't for me but for herself, as if she'd finally allowed something long denied. And in that quiet, in the simplest of touches, in the silence that spoke louder than any declaration, I felt it. The collapse, the surrender, the inevitability. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. We just stayed there, together, and it was enough. I think about that night more often than I should. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. There was no kiss, no sweeping confession, no promise of forever. Just silence, and her hand resting in mine like it belonged there. That's the part that stays with me. The quietness of it. How love, or whatever this is, doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it just leans against your shoulder and breathes. I used to believe love was supposed to be simple. Two people, same age, same story, neat and obvious. She shattered that idea without even trying. She wasn't looking for someone like me, and I wasn't looking for her. But we found something anyway, in the pauses, in the hesitation, in the things neither of us meant to say out loud. She taught me that people carry entire worlds inside them. Regrets, losses, histories that don't vanish just because you step into their life. She didn't need saving. She didn't even need me. What she gave me wasn't an invitation to fix her, but to sit beside her, to listen, to notice, to be present in a way most people aren't. And I changed too. I stopped trying to make every moment add up to something. I learned how to sit in silence without filling it, how to let someone exist without pressing for answers. Love, if I can call it that, isn't about claiming or owning. It's about being awake together, even if only for a little while. People always want to know what happened next. Did we stay together? Did it fall apart? The truth is, life isn't built for neat endings. We still see each other. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's complicated. But every time, there's that same spark, that same quiet electricity that started in the shop. And every time, I remember that night when she said she couldn't promise me anything, and I realized I didn't need her to. What matters is that she let me in, even just a little. And in doing so, she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That feeling at home isn't about walls or addresses. It's about people, fragile, flawed, complicated people, who make the world feel less heavy when they're near. Maybe that's all any of us are searching for. Not forever, not perfection, just a place or a person that feels like home, even if only for a moment. And that's why I can't forget her. So, tell me, have you ever met someone who made you feel that way, even when you knew you shouldn't?